Joe Pullman here from craftworking.net, and in this video I'm going to give you some features on the enterprise server and why you may want to choose it over a home-built computer to do virtualization. If you're going to um, entrust your entire IT life to one particular piece of hardware and run all of your virtual machines on that server, you want it to be as reliable as possible. And there's two ways of doing this. One, you're going to want to buy the most robust uh, server possible, and this is the enterprise server or enterprise class server. The other thing is the high availability, and this is a feature that VMware gives you, and Oracle, and also IBM, and where you can cluster these servers called hosts into one logical unit. So if one host fails and crashes, then you aren't going to be out of luck, and you're going to still be able to use your environment. So the thing with enterprise servers is that these things are built to run 24/7, 365. They're overbuilt, over-engineered. They're a lot more robust than your normal, typical desktop computer that you may want to choose as a home as a solution. So, to give you the features of an enterprise server, because most of you are familiar with desktops and building computers, and you know what they can do, and basically how much memory and resources you can put on one of these things. But the enterprise server you may not be so familiar with, so I'm going to give you some overview on what an enterprise class server gives you that a desktop from an outlet store can give you. So the first thing is that an enterprise server, basically architecturally, are all the same. So whether you buy a Dell or buy an HP or Supermicro or another vendor, Lenovo has now got is in the server game, enterprise server game. Architecturally, they're all about the same. They have a lot more DIMM slots, a lot more memory capacity. They're designed to use the higher end Xeon processors that can support large amounts of memory and a lot more cores than, let's say, an i7 or an i5 processor that you normally would find in a desktop computer. The other thing is that there's going to be your support, and as a standard feature, EEC memory, which is error corrected memory, the registered memory. So they're a lot more robust, a lot more tolerant of errors. They'll do error correction instead of error detection. And they work, and they're a lot more reliable, but also a lot more expensive. The other features that you get with an enterprise server is that the hard drive bays, and all of them have them, it's all hot swappable. So when you put in your hard drives and you configure them as a RAID array, that if a RAID hard drive fails, you just take it out and put another one in. The RAID builds by itself, and you don't lose any. There's no downtime. But that's the main features of an enterprise server, is that the high availability. And like say, if you're going to entrust your IT life to this, then you want something that you know is not going to go down. And so I've been working with these quite a long time. But as far as the over-engineering goes, the fans are a lot more powerful. There's a lot more CFMs. That brings us to the noise factor that these things produce. The processors have very, very large heat sinks on them, and there's no fan on the processors. So you got to keep that in mind. But the main thing is, for the enterprise server, is going to be the memory capacity of these boxes. You're going to see that you can get up to 1.5 terabytes worth of memory. So it's something that you really need to look at when you build one, build a virtualized server. Building a data center is that you're going to run out of memory. These VMs take up a lot of memory. You're going to have a lot of them. And when you get into this, you will be deploying a lot more virtual machines than you would if you were just putting computers together to run a certain application. So, like I say, the enterprise servers are not going to run your i3 or i5 processors or i7s. They're going to be running the Xeon E-series processors. These things can go up to 18 cores. And all of these servers have 2 sockets, so you can add a total of up to 1832 cores now. They're hyper-threaded, so double that. And now with the V4 processors, you can get up to 22 cores per processor. That's 44 cores in a server. Multiplied by the hyper-threading, that's 88 cores in the server. That's a lot of processing power. But you don't need anything close to that. But like I say, this may be something you want to consider when you're looking at buying hardware. When you're dealing with VMware, VMware is designed to be running on these higher-end servers. It's easier to cluster them. So when you also are looking for an enterprise server, you have to consider what kind of hard drives you're going to put in it. Are you going to use shared storage, or are you going to use local storage? If you use local storage, now you're going to want a server with a lot of drive bays on it, and you can get up to 20, 30 bays in a server. They're very large, and it works great. Personally, I like shared storage. In fact, my servers don't even have hard drives in them. One of the nice things that an enterprise server gives you is that you can have it does have onboard RAID, so you can do a RAID configuration. You can add a hardware RAID to it, so you can get hardware RAID and do multiple RAID configurations, RAID 5s, 50s, 60s, and so forth. But another interesting fact that you can about these servers that you don't normally get in a desktop is a feature called IPMI. This is a godsend. If you don't know, if you've never heard of it, read up on it. It's a beautiful thing. What IPMI gives you is the ability to manage your server, log into it, and power it up, power it down, and even take some basic environmental readings off of it with the power off. The only thing is it has to be plugged in, and it has to have power to the server, but the server can be completely powered down, no lights. This is what they call lights out management. And you can actually run, it has an onboard computer, completely separate from the motherboard and the main processors and the memory, and its sole purpose in life is to basically manage the server completely with power off. And it's great because what you can do is, if you do have a failure of the main board, and you can find that out remotely. It's got remote KVM. What you do is you get into this, you configure an IP address on it, you can log into it. It's got a GUI interface, so you can pull up a web page, and it gives you the console of the server itself. So you can actually do the basic management of your hypervisor remotely with IPMI. So it's got a remote console on it, and it's called KVM over IP. So that's one of the big features. But otherwise, besides those factors, the differences between a server and a desktop are basically the same. The only difference is that the enterprise server gives you a lot more reliability and a lot more expandability to the server. So, but that's something to consider when purchasing hardware. Now, these servers have been going are kind of categorized by generation. Generation 4, 5, 6, 7. I think we're up to generation 9 now. And this all has to do with the generation of processors that came out during the time that this came out. So as the generations move forward on up, the prices of the previous generations come down dramatically. So looking at your specifications and look at your requirements, buy the lowest generation possible. My generation, I'm in generation 9, so I'm running E2600 processors with DDR4 of memory. For me, actually, this is overkill. I can go up to a terabyte worth of memory, 32 cores, it is blindingly fast, but it's also paid a lot of money for it. Now, the other server that I've got is a G7, generation 7. It's a Dell DL380, and it's got, I bought it with 32 gig of RAM and 24 cores. It's got 2 processors on it with 8 cores each, 16 processors, and I spent about $500 on it. And it's running VMware. I've got some virtual machines on it, and it's fantastic. So you don't need to buy the latest enterprise server to get a decent performance out of VMware or any of your virtual machines. So keep that in mind. But like I say, now if you look at a G7, even a G6, again, you need to look at the hardware compatibility guide for the hypervisor that you're going to use. VMware 6, I think, only supports G7 on up to G9. 5.5 will support G4 through G9, I think. So, but anyway, what I'm basically saying, I'm actually running a G7 in $500, and it is working great. And it's a Dell, so it's something you want to keep in mind, and probably that's the way I would go. So also what you need to consider is the power supplies. Some of these power supplies, some servers, the lower end enterprise server does only support one power supply. Most of them nowadays support 2. The server will work off of 1 power supply. You don't need both of them. You will get an alarm when the other power supply is not powered on, but that's just a minor inconvenience. So it's another thing to keep in mind, but a lot of this has to do with the reliability of the server. Again, keep in mind that you want as a reliable system as possible, because you do not want to have this thing go down on you and all of a sudden nothing works and you don't have anything to compete with except maybe your laptop. So that's the introduction or the overview of an enterprise server. So it's something to consider. So.